as Yellow Earth developed, it was always exploring physical theatre, East and Southeast Asian inspired physical theatre, as well as really good new writing. And that's why the Typhoon East and Southeast Asian Play Reading Festival was launched. That's why we launched Yellow Ink for new writers, Yellow Stages for new directors. We were really trying to encourage the sector because there were so few of us who were doing it. And I was the first British Chinese person to get an Arts Council bursary to train as a director. I think it was either Jonathan Mann was the second and then Kwong was the third, or the other way around. I can't remember.
Probably the other way around.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, whoever, anyway, so myself and then Kwong and then Jonathan Mann, and hopefully there's more now. But at the time, there were so few of us. So it was, we were trying to do work that was consistently of good quality, that got good reviews, that got good audiences, but we were also trying to develop the next generation of artists. And then when Tom left us, because he had to, he got married and then he started doing a lot more TV and film work, I started working with other East and Southeast Asian choreographers and including contemporary dance and so on. But as the company went on, without Tom's East and Southeast Asian physical theatre skills, he was our movement director. So without that, the physical theatre became whoever we were collaborating with at the time. So, and gradually, new writing became more important. So towards the end of my tenure, I was still trying to do certain shows that were new, that were physical theatre, but new writing just became more and more important because we lost the skill of Tom, and so, the physical stuff was changing depending on who was the movement director each time. And then over to Kumiko.
I suppose when I eventually took the reins, as it were, I think my background, because I've been working in the company, but more and more as the outreach and sort of education participatory side of things. So I'd been doing a lot of work with communities in schools. And that kind of work was feeding into my artistic practice, I suppose. So I was really keen to, I think I was interested in that. At the time also, there were a lot of theatres that happened to be going dark while they were having refurbs, and there was a lot of site-specific work beginning to happen. Yeah. And so I was looking at, taking theatre maybe to taking our theatre into different spaces. So I did the dim sum nights, and that was also combined with trying to find out who was out there, because I didn't know so many people. You developed your own relationships. I developed my own relationships. So when I started, I thought, well, I'd just do an open call and see who's interested, who are the writers, who are the performers now, who's out there that we haven't met yet. So that and I started the dim sum nights.
And in that compartment, you were working a lot with Veronica as well, the outreach work. Yeah. And the two of you did a lot of schools and so on, I remember.
Yeah, we did a lot
and workshops and so on, which are brilliant.
Yes, we had a whole sort of other side to the company that wasn't just productions.
Exactly, and there was education and outreach was really important.
Yeah. And I suppose, and then the academies began, and then that sort of became, that grew over time. And it's become very much a mainstay of what the company is right
and
now,
dim sum nights was a kind of extension of Typhoon.
It was a different
play reading festival, wasn't it? It's kind of putting some,
but bringing writers in to do short pieces.
Exactly.
Writers.
So in terms of artistic changes or development, I mean, from the physical work that we did with Tom and so on and so forth, we began to look at scripts and a lot with Typhoon, and then we started looking at plays which are written, in East Asia, from Korea, from Japan, from Vietnam, etc., etc. But of course, our resources weren't that much, so we had to look at plays that had already been translated to English. So we looked at that, and then we began to introduce them through our play reading festivals. The Typhoon, you see. So that's another trajectory which I think moved on from, well, we did productions as well, but then we added that to it. And also, I mean, play readings is just incredibly wonderful because firstly, it doesn't cost so much, than to do a production, number one, and then you can do, I don't know, 8 plays, 10 plays, 12 plays, or in a week. And I think what's wonderful is because Yellow Earth, in a way, then, New Earth now, sets up to do East Asian work, we're able to, the 12 plays, we need 30 actors because they are, they're 60 characters, right? We're able then to include and invite lots of East Asian, because by that time, a few years down the line, there are lots more younger people, East Asian people coming into the industry. We're able to say, yes, they can join with the work. And so it's very celebratory, of the community, so that was a kind of development of the artistic trajectory.
And I think both Typhoon and Dim Sum Nights particularly, really brought a very wide, but the widest possible, because each show, you can only maximum 7 actors and usually less, 5. Probably
in a play, always than 4.
Average number of
But I love it when it was called Typhoon, Typhoon 1, Typhoon 2, Typhoon 3, and then it, morphed into, I think it's your, is that your?
Dim Sum Nights.
You created that title. Dim Sum Nights, Now, Typhoon, how did that come about, the title Typhoon? What's the inspiration? You know what I mean?
The inspiration,
the dim sum is an East Asian thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an East Asian thing. And also Typhoon is symbolic of change as well, change in the weather. But it's also kind of like, we wanted to shake things up a bit,
We were,
and Typhoon is like, the seasons are changing, and Yellow Earth is a kind of holistic thing about the world.
So specifically is that we were brainstorming. I remember very well. We started a Korean noodles restaurant. We were brainstorming the title. With Veronica was there and so forth, you see. And I think there was some time you call it Fast and Furious because we were doing plays, Fast and Furious or whatever it is. And then we came up with Typhoon and came with that. Because at the time, we just Chinese, Typhoon, we just the Typhoon.
It's used in East Asia, Eastern Southeast Asia.
Very much.
Whereas in the West, they use hurricanes or storms or tempests. They don't tend to say typhoon in the West.
So that is very, I think, symbolic, speaks, I think, very clearly about our work and where we're from, who we are.
Absolutely. But I think Typhoon and Dim Sum Nights, it really opened up the company to as many different East and Southeast Asian actors, writers, directors as possible. It gave, it said, you all have a chance to participate. And practically almost everybody who was working in the industry all got a chance to work via Typhoon or Dim Sum Nights. It was a wonderful platform. And Kumiko, the way she has developed the new writing sector for the East and Southeast Asia, so because there were lots more, by the time Kumiko took over, there were lots more people wanting to give voice. Whereas when I was running it, the first 13 years, that was, we were encouraging people to give voice, but the quality wasn't always there. I mean, I think some of the new writing that came out of Yellow Wing, one play was called Yellow Gentleman by Benjamin Yeo. That was independently produced at the Oval. It was very well received. And so that grew out of the Yellow Wing writing scheme. And there was another play, Wolf in the House, that Simon Wu wrote, grew out of the Yellow Ink writer scheme, and eventually Simon had that produced by the Hong Kong Rep Theatre in Hong Kong. So various new writing things came out of there. That was another strand of companies that we were trying to, but there were not as many writers then. But Kumiko has done a fantastic job.
When you took over, so what were the projects or the changes you brought to Yellow Earth?
Well, I mean, they're saying like the Dim Sum Nights was there to replace the Typhoon, because I remember having a conversation with Philippe, who was the literary manager, and then became co-artistic director with Jonathan Mann for a short period. But he was saying, well, we're getting to the it's getting more difficult to find translated plays into English at one point. And I also thought, actually, it'd be good to try and get, as we've always done, trying to get more homegrown work happening. Yeah. And so the Dim Sum Nights was a less sort of, in a way, it was, what's the word? It's less intimidating sort of platform, because you're just doing 10 minutes of a piece.
Right.
So it's short pieces.
That's what they were.
And it was also very entertaining. The idea was it was like little, bites of theatre served up with dim sum and tea. Yeah, homegrown writers. Everybody who was around, living here, working here, they were coming up with pieces. And the premise also, going back to our physical theatre roots, was Beijing Opera, having a table, 2 chairs. That was your own set. That's so right. You didn't have to have a set, but if you wanted a set, that's all we had, because it was like a bit like Edinburgh, very fast turnover. So everyone came, did 10 minutes, and the next lot came. And then we also actually set it it happened in a Chinese restaurant in the wedding banquet, where there's a wedding banquet room where usually there's a little platform. Obviously the acoustics are challenging, but the atmosphere was great. And I think, and that was, again, the sort of theme was around marriage, love, wedding. There was something about that space. You could take that theme if you wanted to.
And of course, the audience can have dim sum as well.
Yeah, we had dim sum.
Was served.
And then what I loved was that the idea to have it in a restaurant was really to get customers from the restaurant to come upstairs and be part of it. So people who didn't know anything about theatre, who weren't necessarily going to just come up and do it, and that was exciting when you had a mixed table, because all the tables were round, and, people had to share, pour tea for each other and that sort of thing. So there was a communal aspect of it, which I really liked. And I think, and then from those, we then started doing it, voting, which was your favorite piece from the whole week.
Yes.
So that then people could come every night and see and then vote. And then we took 5 of those on a tour, and then we connected up with venues across the country and their local Chinese restaurant, which is their local business. So we were trying to support that.
You took the idea to Manchester as well, didn't you?
We went to Birmingham, Manchester, Oxford. We went all over the place.
Amazing.
Newcastle. So there was also that, and it was for me built a way of building up relationships with venues that I do. I mean, I haven't really been at the forefront of the company. I've been doing my participatory work. So I had a lot of connections with
education.
Certain organisations were not within the theatre world. So that was a good way for me to start that.
It was very successful.
And then we were. And then I set up the professional writers program, which was to really do a 2-year program for writers to actually create a full piece, full piece, and have 2 years to develop it, not just half a year or even a year. Yes. And it had it was very well structured. So we had a dramaturg who was there, who supported them through the whole process. And we had readings, we had workshop readings with actors halfway through. They went to different venues. They met all the literary departments in those days, So it was, and hopefully to have them all produced, that was a play. Yeah. And out of all the first intake, we had 4, actually 3 of them were produced. We produced 3 of them.
What were they?
So that was Worth,
yes.
The Apology. That all came out. The first one, Fix, which we did as a smaller project, but that happened with a co-production. And the third one was actually Thatcher in China, which has had a long history. That was Amy Ng's piece.